Going live, Katie. Good evening and welcome to tonight's telephone town hall with Art Haywood, your Democratic candidate for State Senate. My name is Jordan and I'll be the moderator for tonight's event. We will begin in just a moment and we're excited to have you join us. Before we begin, just a few quick points to make. Right now, we're in the process of dialing out to thousands of people, so just stay on the line and we'll be hearing from Art Haywood shortly. Also, we want to hear from you. So if you have a question you'd like to ask Art, press 0 at any time on your telephone keypad, and you'll be connected directly to one of our volunteer operators. Again, press 0 at any time during this telephone town hall if you'd like to ask a question. If you've just joined us, good evening and welcome to tonight's telephone town hall with Art Haywood, your Democratic candidate for State Senate. Art is running to strengthen our schools and increase wages in Pennsylvania. I'm Jordan, and I'll be the moderator for tonight's event. We're so happy that you're going to join us. We really appreciate it. Right now, we're in the process of dialing out to thousands of people, so just stay on the line, and we'll hear from Art Haywood shortly. If you want to ask a question of Art, please press 0 at any time during the event. Again, press 0, and you'll be directly connected to one of our operators to ask your question. And now, without further delay, here is your Democratic candidate for State Senate, Art Haywood. Art?
Thank you all for joining this call. As some of you may know, I'm a lawyer in Philadelphia and have been for 29 years. And during my entire time as a lawyer, I've assisted families to create opportunity. Some of that opportunity has been affordable housing. Other times it's been jobs and efforts to eliminate blight. I've worked to revitalize Ogons Avenue, create senior housing at Center in the Park, a grocery store at Progress Plaza, and many other places to bring back vitality to our area. I've been married for 25 years, and in November, we celebrate our anniversary. 3 children, 2 are college graduates, and 1 is a college senior, and she's participating in this call tonight. You may know that for many years I lived in Germantown and then moved to Cheltenham, where I've been a township commissioner, part of the group that governs Cheltenham Township, and have been president of the Board of Commissioners for 2 years. We've got a big Senate district that goes from Abington to Cheltenham, Springfield, Chestnut Hill, Mount Airy, West Oak Lane, Germantown. It's a big Senate district, but I'm running on 3 issues. Number 1, to support public education. We're only going to be able to create opportunities for our families if we have strong schools. My mother was a school teacher. I attended public schools. My wife attended public schools. My children attended public schools. That is a source of opportunity, a strong education. Number 2, raising the minimum wage has got to happen. It's only at $7.25 an hour, and you can't survive at that kind of level. I'm for raising the minimum wage to at least $10.10 an hour so that working families can get out of poverty, but also so we can boost our economy by giving 1 million Pennsylvanians a raise, many of whom are women. And third, I'm for reducing gun violence. That means restricting access to guns. And I'm working with organizations across the state to organize a stronger coalition that can fight to reduce access to guns. So thank you again for joining the call. Be glad to answer the questions that are posed so that voters can hear where I stand, but also give you an opportunity to get more involved in this campaign and the election November the 4th.
Thanks so much, Art. So remember, folks, if you have a question you'd like to ask tonight, please press 0 on your telephone keypad, and you'll be directly connected to one of our operators who can take that for you. Again, press 0 to ask a question. Before we ask our first question, we want to hear from you all. So we want to hear what issue matters most to you. So on your telephone keypad, please press 1 if the issue that matters most to you is the economy and jobs. Please press 2 for Social Security and Medicaid. Please press 3 for health care. Please press 4 for education, and 5 for gun safety. Again, we want to hear what issue matters most to you. Press 1 for economy and jobs, 2 for Social Security and Medicare, 3 for health care, 4 for education, and 5 for gun safety. With that, we're going to go to our first question from our audience. Looks like we have a question from Katie. Katie, you're live on the air.
Hi, I was just wondering if you support Medicaid expansion.
Katie, thank you very much for that question. And let me get straight to the point. I do support Medicaid expansion. And I think that the failure of Pennsylvania to quickly go with Medicaid expansion when it was first available to the state left about 600,000 Pennsylvanians without medical care. And when you're without medical care, you're in a life-threatening position. So I'm in complete favor of Medicaid expansion so that individuals across the Commonwealth can have the vital health care that it takes to save lives.
Perfect. Thanks for that great question, Katie. Remember, folks, if you have a question you'd like to ask tonight, please press 0 on your telephone keypad. So our next question comes from Will. Will from Philly, you're live on the air.
Hi, yeah. I was wondering how you feel about raising the minimum wage.
I have had one of my 3 primary campaign issues is for raising the minimum wage, which I think needs to go to at least $10 an hour. And it's for 2 main reasons. Number one, there are many families, women raising children at $7.25 an hour, and it's just not enough. That only comes to $279 a week, and a family can't make it on that much money. So one, raising the minimum wage to at least $10 an hour will get many families out of poverty. Second, as I mentioned in my introductory comments, over 1 million people in Pennsylvania will get a raise if we go to $10 an hour. And that will primarily benefit women, but it also benefits small businesses because small businesses want shoppers who have more money to spend. And so this will be a big boost for our economy, putting more money into the economy so that our small businesses and some of the areas in our town where there's some commercial core to decay, we can bring back some of those areas once we have some viable shoppers. I'm 100% for raising minimum wage, and I have said in my campaign, we need to look at ourselves as voting ourselves a raise, because if we vote for Democrats, Democrats have committed to raise the minimum wage. So the power to raise the minimum wage is in our hands by getting the right people in office.
Thanks for that question, Will. That was a great question. With that, we're going to actually give the answers to our first poll. So it looks like about 37% of the folks on the phone said the issue that mattered most to them was Social Security and Medicare. 26% of you said economy and jobs. 19% of you said education. 11% said gun safety. And 7% said health care. So it looks like most of the people on the phone said Social Security and Medicare. With that, we're going to go to the next question from our audience. Next, we have another William. William is live on the air.
Yes. My question to you is actually 2. One, what can we do about the police shooting black youth that have their arms up and surrendering, and the police come up with answers that no one can answer and they get away with? That's number one. The second thing is with the senior citizens. They pay their dues, and they don't have the proper housing, the proper food, heat, gas, the whole bit. Is there anything being done about that? There's other things like schools and stuff like that, yes, but those 2 questions I need to ask.
Thank you very much for those questions, Williams. Let me go first to the shooting of children by the police. What I believe we need to do, at a minimum, is have much more training of police officers so that they can reduce the amount of profiling that is done. Now, some of this shooting of children goes beyond training. And some of these police officers, in the end, should not be on the police force. So there are some questions about how some of these individuals were selected in the first place. But I believe that the state should use all of its power to prosecute individuals who are killing innocent, whether innocent African Americans, which we found in Ferguson and actually in other parts of the United States as well. They need to be prosecuted so that others in the police force know that they will be held accountable for that kind of conduct. But it's not to be tolerated. It is not to be tolerated. Number two, in terms of seniors, I did share earlier that I had been on the board of Center in the Park, which is a leading senior center in Germantown and really in the nation, and created 58 units of affordable housing for senior citizens. I am an advocate for senior housing so that senior citizens will have an affordable place to stay, and we need more funding to create affordable housing so that the rents can be kept low enough so that they are affordable. Number two, I'm a strong supporter of senior centers are places where individuals can go for support, encouragement, even exercise, and I think the senior citizens are a key place for solutions. I'm also a big advocate for allowing people to age in place. My mother is 85 years old, and she lives at home with my sister. And she does receive support, and that support is important because it's much better for her to age in her home with the care of her friends and neighbors than otherwise in an institutional setting. So for programs that support aging at home, I'm in complete support of. And let me just mention one other thing. In terms of real estate taxes, there are a number of older adults who have found it very difficult to stay in their homes because of real estate taxes. I am and have been an advocate for increasing the amount of abatement on taxes for senior citizens so that they're in a position to stay in their homes. This is an obligation I believe we have to our older citizens. They have paid their dues, you're right. It's their turn for us to take care of them, and we need to step forward and not just say we're not cutting taxes. We've got to provide some help for people who have helped us.
Great. Thank you for that great question. Next, it looks like we have a question from Aura in Philadelphia. Aura, you're now live on the air.
Hello, this is Aura. My question is, how can we solve the problem of our kids not having books in class? I'm 82, and I don't remember none of the days that we went to school that we were not prepared or not have books for class. I don't understand that, why teachers have to pay for things that the class needs out of their salaries. I don't understand that. I don't see the necessity for it, and I don't understand it.
I agree that every child should have a up-to-date textbook in order to learn, and that's in every grade as well. And there are a number of schools in the city of Philadelphia where there are not up-to-date textbooks and where every child does not have an up-to-date textbook. Let me tell you why that has happened, at least one reason. When I graduated from high school in 1975, the state of Pennsylvania was paying more than half of the cost of public education. Now, the state of Pennsylvania, on average, pays about 34% of the cost of public education, so that the amount of funding for public education that comes from the state of Pennsylvania has gone down, down, down since 1975. And so as a result, the resources that the schools have gone down, down, down. And now, 50 years later, schools don't have textbooks and supplies, and the teachers are having to buy copy paper. This is all a result of inadequate funding. And I'm committed, as was Governor Rendell, to increasing state funding for the public schools, back up to at least 50% of the total bill. Once the schools have the resources, then the children can have the textbooks and supplies, and we will not have to look to the teachers to go into their paychecks to cover these essential items. So I would say to you, ma'am, there's been a big shift in support of public education over the last 50 years, and we need new leadership that can reverse that shift. That's not just me, it's also Tom Wolf.
Thanks for asking that important question, Aura. Before we go to our next question, we want to hear from you guys again. I mean, Art is relying on dedicated people like you guys to help him win this election, and we want to know if we can count on you to donate or to volunteer for his campaign. So if we can count on you to donate or volunteer for his campaign, please press 1 now to volunteer if you'd like to volunteer, press 2 if you'd be willing to donate, and press 3 if you'd be willing to volunteer and donate to the campaign. Again, that's 1 if you'd be willing to volunteer, 2 if you'd be willing to donate, and 3 if you'd be willing to volunteer and donate. Great. And with that, we're going to our next question. It looks like we have a question from Charles in Philadelphia. Charles, you're now live on the air.
I am interested in knowing what measures you would push or support for gun controls.
Thank you very much. And I have found that there are a number of measures that can restrict access to guns. Now, let me just take a step back. The main kind of gun that's involved in crime are handguns. And that is where we need to target our efforts. So let me give you one area which I'm very much in favor of. Requiring licensing of handguns with a fingerprint. Now, in several states, including Maryland, which have this handgun licensing requirement with fingerprints, gun sales have gone down because people don't want to be accountable for buying a gun and then turning it over to someone for criminal activity once their fingerprint is connected to the license and the gun. And not only have gun sales gone down, but gun deaths have gone down. So I would say requiring handgun fingerprint licensing is my number 1. Number 2 would be 1 gun a month. This is also directed toward the same goal of making sure that individuals don't go to a gun shop, buy 20 or 30 guns, and then sell them to people who end up using them in a crime. So I'm very much for 1 gun a month. In Pennsylvania, we do need expanded background checks on all gun transactions, and I think that's an important step forward. Those would be my top 3 areas for restricting access to guns. But let me also say this. It's going to take a significant effort to organize in order to get any further restriction to guns. Today, the House and the Senate in Pennsylvania made it even more difficult for cities to restrict access to guns by saying that the National Rifle Association can sue a city and recover money if the city tries to restrict access to guns. And let me make it more clear. In Cheltenham Township 3 years ago actually, we passed an ordinance that says if you have lost a gun or if you've had a gun stolen, you've got to report that to the police within 72 hours. This was for the sole purpose of making gun owners responsible to make it less likely that a lost or stolen gun would be into the hands of a criminal. Today, the state legislature said, if we keep that law on the books in Cheltenham, we can be sued for violating the state law that says we're not supposed to be making any gun control rules. So it's going to take a significant effort, but I'm committed. I've agreed to meet with a number of anti-gun violence advocates in January to convene a statewide meeting so we can begin to develop the kind of coalition over time that it's going to take. Thank you very much for that question, and I hope I can get your support in our efforts to build a strong anti-gun violence coalition in Pennsylvania.
Thanks so much for that great question. Remember, folks, if you have a question you'd like to ask tonight, please press 0 at any time on your telephone keypad. And please press 0 again if you'd like to ask a question. So our next question comes from Mark. Mark, you're live on the air. Okay, it looks like we lost Mark. Our next question comes from Michelle in Philly. Michelle, you're live on the air. Well, it looks like we lost Michelle, but I can ask her question for her. So Michelle wanted to know what your approach was to creating jobs in the Commonwealth.
I have several approaches to that, and let me just give you some framework. Today I read a report that Pennsylvania was 50th, that is last, in all states since Governor Corbett became the governor in terms of job creation. We are last in job creation for the last 4 years. So here's some remedies to that. Number one, we do need to invest in education because through education investments, we create not only a stronger workforce that's capable of taking jobs that exist in the Commonwealth, but we're also building the framework for entrepreneurship. We've got to have an educated population to work as well as to create jobs. Number two, I'm for investing in infrastructure. And I've said many times that we cannot build a 21st century economy based upon a 19th century infrastructure. So we need to invest more funds into our ports, into our airports, into bridges and roads, and into technological infrastructure so that we create the framework so that businesses can grow, as well as create some jobs by the infrastructure investments. I believe that the third one, which I've mentioned already, is raising the minimum wage. This economy in the United States is about 60% driven by consumer spending. The more consumers spend, the more businesses sell, the more products have to be produced. If we increase consumer spending by moving people out of poverty, they're going to buy. And what they buy has to be produced and jobs will be created. So those are my three primary solutions. Now, I've got one more actually related to small business. Small businesses in Pennsylvania do not operate on a level playing field with big businesses. Big businesses get a number of corporate tax breaks that small businesses do not. And I'm for leveling the playing field so that small businesses can compete with big business and eliminating some of these big corporate tax breaks that really do nothing for our economy but drain funds for education and give big business an advantage over small businesses that's not sustainable.
Perfect.
That was
Thanks
a great
for that.
question. Thank you very much.
Okay, so remember, folks, if you have a question you'd like to ask this evening, please press 0 on your telephone keypad. Again, press 0 if you'd like to ask a question. So our next question comes from Bill. Bill, you're now live on the air.
Hello, Art. Good luck with your campaign. This is Bill Metler. And I wondered if you have heard about the revenue-neutral carbon tax. It's an exciting initiative whose time has come, and I was wondering if you had heard about it.
I'm glad to hear from my friend Bill Metler, who we've worked together for many years to create a more sustainable Cheltenham. I just want to give you some background. Several years ago, I initiated an effort called Sustainable Cheltenham. And we had about 50 residents involved to come up with a sustainability plan for Cheltenham. And over the last few years, we've begun to make some investments to reduce our dependence upon fossil fuels, to increase our efficiency in terms of the use of electricity, and I would say slowly to move toward using more renewable sources of energy. In terms of the carbon neutral tax, I'm not very familiar with it. be very interested in hearing more about that tax. I can say that I have had several conversations with representatives of Sierra Club about their plan to reduce our dependence upon fossil fuels and in turn increase our reliance on renewable energy at the rate of 1% a year. And I've told them that I am in support of that kind of transition where we increasingly use renewable energy. But in terms of how to make the revenue neutral carbon tax work in Pennsylvania, I'm completely open to having that kind of conversation and would be glad to do so.
Thanks for that question, Bill. Remember, folks, if you'd like to ask a question this evening, please press 0 on your telephone keypad. So our next question comes from Nick. Nick's in Philly. Nick, you're live on the air.
Hello?
Yep, you're on the air, Nick.
Oh, great. I was just wondering if you were able to talk about sort of your record on the environment, what you've done, and you know what you plan to do.
Sure. Thank you very much. And what I briefly shared is that I initiated the Sustainable Cheltenham effort here in Cheltenham Township, which was an effort of over 50 residents to come up with a sustainability plan for the township that included reduction of carbon emissions, as well as transition to renewable energy and increasing use of the local economy in terms of shopping and purchases. So I have received the endorsement of the Sierra Club as well. Let me also say that I was a leader of using more, making recycling much more dominant here in Cheltenham. Let me tell you how. We adopted a program, for one, to have single stream recycling, so we could get all the recycling materials into one place, but also to have automated collection of recycling materials. And these two combinations have significantly increased the level of recycling that we've had here in the township, reduced the amount of waste that we have to dispose of, and are sending us, I think, in the right direction. In terms of future, I'm very much in favor of protecting our natural lands. I've also said that I'm interested in looking at how we make the transition to renewable energy. Sierra Club has proposed increasing use of renewable energy at 1% a year, and I'm very much in favor of trying to make that happen. So I think that would be my short answer, but I have, I think, a strong record, which is why I believe I got the endorsement of Sierra Club in terms of environmental protection.
Thanks for that great question, Nick. So now, you all, we need to elect a state senator like Mr. Haywood that will continue to fight for us in Harrisburg. So we want to hear from you. Can we count on you all to support Art on Election Day? Please press 1 on your telephone town keypad if you'll be willing to support Art. Press 2 if you won't be supporting Art, and 3 if you're undecided but you'd like more information about Art Haywood. Again, that's 1 if you'd be willing to support Art, 2 if you're not supporting Art, 3 if you're undecided but you'd like more information about Art Haywood. And Art, so we've been getting a lot of questions sort of about women's right to choose and access to reproductive health care. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
I'd be glad to talk about it. I should let the callers know that, as I said at the outset, I've been married for 25 years and I have 2 daughters. And it's critical to me that my family and my daughters and women in general have freedom over their bodies. And so I have been endorsed by Planned Parenthood because I do support the right to choose. But it's not limited to right to choose in terms of my view on some of these women's issues. I have, in 1988, joined with a group of lawyers at Community Legal Services to provide protection from abuse orders from women facing domestic violence. And we were some of the early lawyers providing these protection from abuse orders so that individuals could not have to suffer from being beaten. And it seems to me that we've got to do far more in terms of protection from domestic violence. And I've looked at a law in Massachusetts. I think it may be a model law for reporting and creating some accountability. And I'm going to be pushing for the adoption of more comprehensive protections based upon domestic violence. But I also want to share with you that in addition to the right to choose, in addition to being protected from domestic violence, we've got to make sure that there's no discrimination against women. I certainly don't want anyone discriminating against my two girls or anyone else's daughters or mothers or grandmothers. And so having anti-discrimination rules that are enforced, requiring equal pay for equal work, these are all steps that we need to make in this nation. This nation has had a long journey toward inclusion. And by inclusion, I mean treating each person fairly, like we would want to be treated. And so it took us a while to include African Americans fully. It took us a while to include women fully. And we still have issues on both of those. But the more we include each other without discrimination, maximizing our freedom, it will be better for everyone in the society, each of us.
Thanks for that. Perfect. So remember, folks, if you have a question you'd like to ask tonight, please press 0 on your telephone keypad. Again, that's 0 if you'd like to ask a question. So our next question comes from Devin in Philly. Devin, you're live on the air.
Hi, yeah. I was wondering what you think makes you most qualified to serve in the Senate. We've heard a lot about what you stand for today, but just what makes you most qualified?
That's a good question, and let me think about it, and let me just tell you what I think. I got into this race really because I cared. My wife and I, like many others, listen to what is happening in our communities, and, we sit around and complain sometimes. But this time I said, somebody's got to care. The next day, the question came to me, do I care enough to step forward? And I decided that I did. So I believe that is the key qualification here. I have had experience in local government by being a township commissioner, so I know and I've learned what it takes to make government work for people. That's important. But more fundamentally, we need elected officials, we need community leaders who care deeply. And that, I think, is the core.
Great. Thanks for that question, Devin. Speaking of care, Art, it seems like we got a lot of questions about your Dare to Care and what. Can you talk a little bit more about what your campaign talks about when it refers to Dare to Care?
Dare to Care. Thank you for that question. In our campaign back in January, we were a campaign that was considered to have no chance to win. And we dared to run to represent this neighborhood, to this community. And we dared to run because of how deeply we cared. And so Dare to Care is really a message not just for this campaign, but for everyone in this community and on this call. It's clear to me that if we care enough, we're going to come out and vote for some new leadership that can make a difference. And sometimes we have to care enough to take an action that's more courageous, to help a stranger, to help someone we don't know, to take a risk. And the more we're willing to take risk because we care for each other, the more successful that we're going to be. And let me just give you a good example of how daring to care can work. In 2011, we had a lot of flooding here in Cheltenham. And some residents organized to try to come up with a response to try to get some resources in. Those who cared the most came to meeting after meeting after meeting. And in the end, we were able to get the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to come to Cheltenham to develop a plan to alleviate flooding. But they not only cared, they took risk. And they took risk in terms of meeting with me and other elected officials that they didn't know. They put trust in people that they didn't know. So this, I believe, is the core of what makes a community strong. Having some people who are willing to take risk to care for another. That's what Dare to Care is about. And that's the heart of the campaign, and I believe it is the heart of positive community relations.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Art. And with that, it looks like we're out of time. Would you mind saying a few closing words before we end for the night?
First, I'd like to thank everyone who joined the call. I really appreciate it and hope that you all receive something meaningful from the call. I also hope that this will encourage everyone who participated on the call to vote on November the 4th and vote for a change. Vote for Tom Wolf, but also for me. I also want to share my campaign contact phone number is 267-415-1818. 267-415-1818. We're going to have a second town hall conference call next Tuesday at 7. So I request that you join me next Tuesday at 7 o'clock for our second call. But most importantly, I ask for your support on November the 4th. Thanks again.
Thank you all for joining us for this call. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to every question. If you have any additional questions, please stay on the line. You will be able to leave a voicemail for Art at the end of this call. If you don't have a question, we still want to hear from you and about why you support Art Haywood for State Senate. Just say your name, where you're from, and tell us why you support Art in the campaign. And we might use these recordings on our website and social media or in the media, but we really want to hear from you. If you'd like more information, please visit haywoodforsenate.com. Thank you for your time, and have a great night.